Nelson, Adeline, welcome. This morning, I got to give my giving story in church, and we thought this might be a great way to learn more about y'all and your journey so far. And so thanks for doing this. Do you remember the first time that you were intentionally generous? And maybe it's you did something nice for someone, or you helped somebody. You might have given money for a cause. Can you remember what that was?
For me, it's intentionally. I can remember as a child going to church. Back in the days, for us going to church, we went to church like a family. Myself, my mom and dad, my grandma and grandpa, and my siblings, it's like a whole 20 of us, my uncles and his wife. So before we go to church, what my parents did, or my grandma might do, will give us like they call it then was like 25 francs. It's more like, let me say an equivalent now to like say $1 or 25 cents, but they were like coins, right? So because growing up, we had what they call like a Sunday school. So the kids go to the Sunday school, so they have their own offering basket there where you give something. Is different from what the adult goes. So they make sure to give us our own quarters, share everybody's, take yours. So that was already instilled in us from early childhood. So as far as I can remember, that's be my experience.
Yeah. For me, intentional giving is a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Like my husband just said, I grew up in a Pentecostal home where tithe and offering is an active part of Christianity. Mm-hmm. So my parents will make sure that they give you your offering before you even go to church. So it's intentional. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So growing up, you know that going to church is part of giving.
Absolutely.
And when you start having gifts, like when somebody comes to the house and visit and ends up giving you $20,000, which is like $20 here. Yeah. My mom is going to remind you to make sure that you get your tithes from that $20 and give it. Mm-hmm. So giving has always been like you have to actively do it.
Correct.
So I don't know if that, it's what you're looking for.
Sure. Yeah. And there's no, hey, I'm just looking for, your story here and your experience. So It's all good. Yeah. It all started though with your parents, such as like you were saying, your parents and your family.
Yes.
That whole family structure. Uh-huh. So how has it been now that you're parents? How has that been turning it around and teaching that same value?
Absolutely. And that's what we are consciously doing that. So most of the time in church, I will write before we leave the house, I'll write our check for what we'll give.
Yeah, because we just have one checkbook, so we pay one check to the church.
So this Sunday, I'll give it to my son. The next one, I'll give it to my daughter. The other one, you put it in the basket. So I make sure every one of them take a 10, but that's instilling to them that value of giving. Mm-hmm. And they really get it. They really get it. Sometimes they will have their own $2. They'll decide that I have my own, I want to put in. I'm like, oh, that's good.
Awesome.
You put in yours. So
hey Chris, I have to tell you this story about giving. Mm-hmm. Okay. One time growing up, when I was really younger and I was almost traveling to the United States, my father took me to our village. And maybe to him, it's like, I want you to know your roots before you really leave. We don't know where you're coming back. Yeah. And going to the village, I met my cousins. And this is somebody, we have the same grandpa, but we've never met.
Grandparents.
Yeah, we have the same grandparents, but I grew up in the city and they're in the village. And at some point, my father wanted me to give to them. And I wasn't working. But he wanted the gift to come from me.
Give them something.
Okay. So I feel like you said, maybe it's coming from our parents. I have always known that it's more blessed to give than to receive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hold that wholeheartedly.
I have always known that it's more blessed to give than to receive. So each time there's a calling for giving, I know that there is a bigger blessing in giving. Correct. So I really don't question it. I trust the church authority to use the money for what God is calling the church to do. Mm-hmm. And I go by that. I go by that doctrine or that notion that mm-hmm. it's more blessed to give and you're giving to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for y'all, I mean, it's not just a blind faith of giving. I mean, because you're active, you're part of the leadership. So you have the responsibility of stewarding that wisely, and you know where it's going. So I really appreciate that. What do you think are some of the barriers that people come across when it comes to their journey of giving? What are some of the things that we just, you think people have to fight through as far as barriers getting in their way?
I would say the number one is unbelief. Most people believe that giving is enriching the pastor.
No, it's not.
Yes. Most people look at giving, they are looking at, I'm just giving my money, what do I get in return? You know, money has been used as a medium of exchange whereby you give to receive something. Yeah. And giving to a church that you're not actively participating in the missions of the church, you don't know even how the church runs, you don't understand why you're giving. So I feel like that's one of the major barriers. If people can overcome the lack of knowledge, the lack of unbelief, the lack of belief, and get to a point where they know that giving is part of your Christian journey.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and it's not, giving it as a Christian isn't transactional.
Yes,
it's not. I'm paying for these services.
Yeah.
We come and it's, hey, God has blessed me with all this in my life.
Yeah.
In response, out of my gratefulness, I want to share back a little bit of what he's given me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a big hurdle, especially in our society. It's everything is, what can you do for me
now,
and for the least amount of money. And
yeah, it's
the teaching on generosity hasn't been as intentional. And so there's a big barrier there of how people view their resources.
The resources.
I don't know, Nelson, did you have one in mind that as far as a barrier for people growing in their giving?
Yeah, I was going to add, we live in a society where everything is more like now, instant gratification. It's like, I call it a microwave society where people give, then they expect the result tomorrow. God, I'm in problems, I'm doing this, I'm giving you this, hoping you'll multiply it tomorrow, the next day, or instantly. It doesn't work that way, right? It really doesn't. So this microwave mentality of instant gratification and it doesn't work. For me, I look at it this way, where it might take another generation before you can reap your rewards. We have kids, whatever we're doing today to sustain the church, we might, in our generation, I don't expect us to see the result. But at some point, my kids or my grandkids, they will be blessed in some way, some fashion, thanks to what their parents did, sow the seed for them, right? Yeah. And I believe we're here today, me and my wife, because what our parents and grandparents did, the seed they sow in the church, they are giving, it prepares us now, we're in a better place because they did that sacrificial giving. So that's how I look at it, where it's don't look at giving I need result tomorrow. When we're looking at that,
Nelson and I we're going through the olive plants, the giving journey. And we're just talking about giving today, renovating our church, building our church, strengthening our church, knowing that 2 generations down the road, our grandchildren will still go to the same church that we went to because it's still there.
It's still there standing.
because we invested in it and it's still there.
Yeah.
They're not going to get up and like, I wish there was a sustainable building here that we can go to. So that's one of the things we're talking today when we're reading this.
Right.
So,
and one thing we also touch, we pick on there where it says, for in regards to the olive, where it takes 5 years before it bears fruit. Think about it.
Yeah.
So that goes back to my mindset of saying, don't get the microwave mindset. I need instant reward now.
Yeah.
You plan something, it takes 5 years. So it's the same thing as being generous with the church. Whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight.
It's not going to happen overnight, right?
and there are some giving that you're impacting your community.
Absolutely.
You're impacting your community, and if that community is better, your life is better.
Correct.
All right, let me tee up a nice, easy question here for you. So tell me, how important is prayer when it comes to making that decision on your level of giving for this year?
For this year.
Prayer is hope.
Prayer, and it must start with prayer.
Yeah.
You have to pray over it. You have to discuss it with your spouse or with yourself if you're by yourself, and then pray about it. Don't just go give, pray about it. I know some people were like, this is my last dollar. I always say, if you can give more, do it. Because in our church, in the community, there might be somebody that is a church member, right? Or somebody in the community where they were able to do it last year, but this year they might have lost their job or they might have reduced their work hours. And for them, if you can close that gap for them, right? If you are able to or capable of giving more, you just help them, right? So it's about community.
But at the end of the day, when you pray, it's like a communication with God. You're asking God like, Lord, you know what I have.
Absolutely.
Give me the conviction on what I can give and help me. It's like when you get into this commitment with God, like I want to give this. In your subconscious, you know you've told God that this is what you want to do. How are you going to want to change your mind? So you're praying to God to give you the commitment, the spirit of commitment, and
show you the way, lead you
the
to that.
strength to not get distracted, not get discouraged by how many people are giving, to go forth with it, because you know the greater reward is in the future. The greater reward is in the community. If your community is impacted, you are impacted.
Yes.
And if God has called you to be a leader, at the end of the day, what the community does doesn't matter. It's what you do. And if you look yourself as a leader, you know, it said that to whom more is given, more is expected.
Absolutely.
So now that God has blessed us, do we want to be stingy with that blessing?
No.
Because to me, I have it in my heart that God has given me much. Is he expecting much from me? That's what the Bible says, yes.
Yes.
He is expecting much from me. So when I'm praying to God, I know he sees my heart and he knows how much he has blessed me. How am I going to go to God in prayer and I'm trying to be stingy when he knows everything?
Right.
And if I had to add to that, when we're talking much, somebody might like, I'm not making $1 million. Much doesn't mean you have to make $1 million, right? If you have enough, that's much. If you are able to go to work, have a job, pay your bills, that's much. Yeah. So it's not the quantity. I'm a millionaire, I make $1 million. No, if you make $20,000, that's enough, right? So make sure what you are giving, I would say, pray about it. Make sure you're giving, you've prayed about it, you're giving your best. And I think God sees all that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the person that I think Jesus praised the most that I can think of off the top of my head, the widow's mite.
Yeah.
And is because that's the last that she had.
Yeah,
and it's
because
not
most
that
people think that they have to have a lot to be able to give.
No.
Yeah. I've learned that God's given us so much that I can set aside that 10% first.
Yeah. And
I've learned to trust that the 90% is still more than enough.
Absolutely.
And I remember back in my life when I wasn't as generous, and it was that I was more afraid of, well, if I take this much out, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this or that?
Yeah.
And I was a poorer manager
Of your finances.
of God's resources. When I was like that, I said, well, I'm gonna use 100% for me. I got in bigger trouble that way. And it was when I said, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to start by tithing.
Yeah.
And be intentional with the rest. And and it's not that God blessed my bank account, but he blessed my life for honoring him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that I've never had a tight day, or that it's the bank account's low or something like that. We all go through that.
All been there.
But the stresses are far less.
Yeah.
And it's because of belief or like trust. All that has grown through that. So
it will be
I think, and so I think y'all nailed it. This all has to be done in prayer, and I think that's what, if we were going to tell someone who's kind of thinking about what their commitment will be on February 7th,
yes,
that's what we can tell them, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a big day. Pray about it. Take it to the Lord.
Yeah.
Take it to the Lord. You will not be
once
disappointed.
You can cut out what you want to give to God, He's going to give you wisdom to manage what you already have for yourself.
Yep.
And you realize that you're able to cut away waste without even missing the waste. And you realize that, oh, I've been wasting all this time, Yeah.
Well, great. Well, Nelson knows if you do a Zoom with me, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be in my car driving around and pulling over to do these things. So,
which is great. I mean, multitasking, that's part of life, right? I mean, it's awesome. So no, that's good.
Yeah. So that's part of parenthood and
exactly. You don't have to be tied on a desk or somewhere. Yeah.
Ours are locked up upstairs. So we have to find a way to get things done.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for doing this, and I look forward. We'll see you in church next week.
Yes, sir.
And y'all have a great day and a great week.
We appreciate everybody. Be renewed. Let's be renewed. Let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing, and we pray that God continue to sustain our church.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Be good.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.